Hello and welcome, all of you joining us on Facebook or maybe later on our YouTube channel. We're gonna begin our Shabbat together, Shabbat Shalom, with asking Jal to lead us into our intro after he unmutes himself. Amen. We start, as always, in our prayer book on page 31. At the bottom of the page, Yismechu Hashamayim. May the heavens rejoice. So welcome. Welcome to this Shabbat in the middle of April. We enter into Shabbat with song, with melodies, with music. We enter into Shabbat by opening our heart, by taking a few deep breaths. We enter into Shabbat as is written on our prayer book, this time actually on page 1, with kavanah. Those of you who are taking my class on Hasidism have heard me talk about that word a lot because it was core to the Hasidic masters to enter into every celebration, every moment of prayer with great kavanah, with great intentionality, with great presence of mind. The kavanah that we use in actually most prayer books in all different denominations is from Isaac Luria, mostly from the Kabbalists. It calls us to open our heart. And you may be reading on page 1 of our prayer booklet, to open our hearts with gratitude. To open our heart with gratitude for the unfathomable miracle of all that is, of all creation. To enter with this kind of mindfulness. And we do that for, it says in our invitation to mindfulness, for the sake of unification. For the sake of unification of Kudsha B'Richu, of the divine masculine transcendent, Ushchinte, and the Shekhinah, the divine feminine, immanent, present. This is what we invite ourselves into as we engage with this coming into Shabbat. That we do this for the sake of oneness. That we do this within ourselves for the sake of transcending divisions, of transcending duality, of knowing that what seems on the outside and what seems to be on the inside and separate from each other actually is just an illusion of the mind. That in fact, all that is the divine manifest. That this world, this creation, is alive, is shining with the energies of the divine being. Every atom, every molecule, conscious and aware, channeling the divine presence. And so that's the kavanah within which we enter into this moment, to open our heart, and to make every word of prayer, of song, of teaching shared, received or given, a doorway to remembering that beyond the seeming two-ness, there is only oneness. And we do that as we share in our tzedakah. Tzedakah is a word that means charity. It's a word that actually is better understood as justice. It is justice because as we do this with that kind of kavanah, it resets the scales of separation. Those who are in need are only in need because we have at some level excluded them, that we have not allowed them in. And so we do acts of justice by sharing whatever we have, whatever abundance we have, however small, with those who have been excluded. These days, and I am actually right now putting the link to our website in the chat room for tonight. And I'm going to do the same thing as I'm thinking about it in the Facebook, on the Facebook page. This is the link for everyone to share a little bit of your abundance. This month we are supporting actually a great cause that is actually sponsored by an interfaith group, the Interfaith Climate Action, that includes our synagogue, Seattle First Baptist Church, as well as other members of other communities who have come together to support a project called Green Building Now, Green Buildings Now. And it addresses two key imperatives in our world today. One is obviously to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from all of our buildings, public and private, but also to bring the benefits of clean energy to historically marginalized populations and communities. This project of decarbonization is supporting the development of a multiracial community on Beacon Hill. And this is where our kavanah, our energies, are going to right now. And we hope that you will support it. As you click on that link, it should get you to our website, our webpage. Scroll down until you see where it says type. There is a drop-down menu from that. Click on the little arrow for the drop-down menu. And as you scroll down that menu, find Shabbat, and underneath that, Tzedakah. Click on that and then make your donation. Thank you for supporting this effort to heal our planet and heal our society both at the same time. And the third thing we do after we enter with great kavanah, with great mindfulness, after we share of our abundance in the name of that specific kavanah of unification, of oneness, we also light our candles. And our candles, as our mind, are usually also two, right? And it is a mindful reminder that from two-ness, two candles actually are burning from the one same flame. And that is how we enter into Shabbat. We enter into Shabbat by kindling the light that is not the light of the candles, but the light of Shabbat itself, the light of this space that we are creating together, this sacred space, this sacred time we are sharing together. And the song that is going to lead us into lighting our Shabbat candles tonight is from Reb Nachman of Bratslav, who used this verse from Psalms, Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid. I realize the presence of the One right here in front of me, around me, within me, always. And may those Shabbat candles, may the light of Shabbat be a reminder for us of that one presence always. It is on page 30 in your prayer book. And as Diana leads us into that song, I invite you now to light your Shabbat candles. And like every Shabbat, I invite you, before we say the blessing, still on page 1, I invite you to hold in your heart your intention, your kavanah behind lighting those candles tonight. What it is that you are yearning to bless, yearning to kindle. I'm going to ask, if you so choose, to maybe write in the chat room what you found as I invited you to look within. What you are honoring, commemorating, celebrating, blessing, connecting with on this Shabbat. And just type a few words, and I'll do my best to read as many of them. In the meantime, Celia had let us know in the office that she is lighting her candles tonight in honor and memory of her beloved cat, Wiley, who lost his battle with lymphoma this past Wednesday. He was 16 years old and loved by many people. And I know that Elizabeth Heath also lost her cat these last few days. So we hold both of those four-legged in light of Shabbat tonight. Her cat was Pepper, and also died on Wednesday. He was almost 18. Rich is connecting with his kids and his friends as he's joining us for this Shabbat, together with being on his journey through the days of the Ramadan. Linda is saying peace. Carol is holding in light her family. Susan Hostin is kindling light for the many residents of her home. Michael Lyons for spring and the healing of the planet. Linda is acknowledging the many colors of the rainbow of creation and blessing all of creation through all of the different hues and colors in which it manifests. Good. There could be a thousand more. The blessing is again on page 1. We cover our eyes. Again, to remind ourselves that the light of the candles is not what we are blessing. They're only a reflection, only an invocation for that which is kindled within. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר של שבת. אמן. And we continue with remembering our kavanah of uniting the transcendent divine masculine with the immanent divine feminine, of bridging two-ness to find oneness. On page 5, we engage with the words of the Baruch Hu, the words, the call to blessing. Remembering that the et of the Baruch Hu is a little word in Hebrew that means with. And so the call to blessing is that we would bless together with the eternal, all that is blessing. We say, Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Bless with the eternal, the one who is blessing. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Blessed is the eternal, the one who is blessing eternally. And we continue on page 6 with the words of the Shema. L'shem Yechud Kuchabrechu Shchinte, for the sake of unification of the divine masculine and the Shekhinah, we say these words that are calling us always to move beyond two-ness, to know oneness. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, Israel. The eternal manifests as all that is. The eternal is one. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Blessed is the name. The splendor of its presence shines eternally.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Shem kavod malchuto le'olam va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai echad. 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 Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai echad.
And we continue still on page 6 with the Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. And we continue on this Shabbat by connecting worlds together. We are on page 17 in your prayer book with a chant to bridge worlds, a chant that reminds us that we are connected and that we connect through all of our holidays together. And we wanted to have this song tonight to connect with all of our brothers and sisters who are celebrating Ramadan in these days and weeks. A chant to bridge worlds.
Sorry. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La
Yasher koach. Yasher koach. So, I wanted to talk to you about this week's Torah portion. And as you might imagine, this week's Torah portion is one of my all-time favorite Torah portions. And in fact, I suspect that it is most everyone's favorite Torah portion, as it talks about tzara'at, which is usually translated as leprosy. And who doesn't want to hear, read, and study about oozing wounds on people's skins, around white or pink patches? Who wouldn't delight in spending a whole week learning and studying about that? So I know it must be your favorite Torah portion as much as it is mine, for sure. But the truth is, we don't exactly know what tzara'at was, because it wasn't really leprosy. It was a kind of fungi. It was maybe an infection that, in fact, could spread on the walls of one's house, even on one's clothes. And at a time where, some thousands of years ago, where there were really no trained dermatologists, it was in fact the priest's job to ascertain the severity of the affliction and therefore decree a shorter or longer period of isolation of those who were affected. They were usually sent outside of the camp or in temple times, locked down in their homes. And if it sounds familiar to us now, it's because it's really eerily is so. Now, one of the most famous biblical characters to suffer from tzara'at is Moses' sister Miriam, for whom he famously begged God in an ancient wilderness, Ana elna, refana la, Holy One, please heal her now, which is actually the song that we will be sharing in just a moment during our healing circle. But why was Miriam afflicted with tzara'at? Because the Torah tells us she and Aaron, Moses' brother, were gossiping. They were gossiping in deeply negative and harsh ways about Tzipporah. Tzipporah was Moses' wife. And they together, Miriam and Aaron, were indulging in Lashon Hara, what is usually translated as the evil tongue, gossiping, bad-mouthing, maybe would be another way of saying that. Incidentally, if you read the Torah, only Miriam and not Aaron falls ill with the tzara'at. And the Torah never tells us why Aaron was spared the disease when Miriam got stuck with it. But the fact that tzara'at was connected to gossiping, the fact that tzara'at was connected to Lashon Hara, piqued my interest. So I looked into it, as you can imagine, more deeply this past week. Now the Talmud says that Lashon Hara, spreading disparaging information about someone else, harms three people: the speaker, the listener, and the person being gossiped about. Now, the last one is somewhat obvious. Many lives have been ruined, many reputations forever irreparably tarnished by Lashon Hara. In our day and age, disparaging social media postings have been known to cause too many teen suicides. As much as words can heal, we know that words can also kill. But what about the first two, the spreader of gossip and the listener? Let's talk about the second one. Our tradition says that any gossip, even saying something positive about someone who obviously isn't here, right? Any gossip, even saying something good about someone who isn't here, is prohibited. Now, why is that? Why would it be prohibited to say something great about someone else? Because of the listener. Because the listener, hearing something either positive or negative about someone else, can change their perception of them, can change their relationship with them. Hearing something positive being said, a compliment or a praise about a third person, can cause the listener to feel envious, to feel jealous. And so instead of having warm regards for the person being praised, they might in fact end up despising them. Now, what about the person engaging in Lashon Hara, in gossiping, in evil tongue? They are harmed as well in the eyes of the community for being the source of distrust, for spreading lies and calumny, for endangering life, destroying the very fabric of society by undermining trust and truth. And so in biblical times, the punishment for that was to be stricken with tzara'at, which caused the person to be excluded from the community, to be put in isolation, in seclusion, a time perhaps intended for self-reflection and for personal growth. It wasn't really punishment, as it was more about giving time for, it's like getting a timeout to really think deeply about what this Lashon Hara was actually causing, the damage that it was inflicting around the persons in the community, and the destruction that it could bring about. And in that, it is interesting to note that the word tzara'ah is in fact synonymous to the word, the translation of which would be to prostrate oneself, to humble oneself. And so perhaps this affliction, this tzara'at, is meant to cause the person engaging in Lashon Hara to do just that, to diminish one's ego, to become more humble, to prostrate oneself. Now, there are countless tzara'ot that our world is inflicted with in our day. And the current pandemic is only one of them, as they are all interconnected. And they all have one major source, I would argue. And that one major source is humanity's ego. The devastation they inflict, the millions of death, both human and non-human death, that they cause are all sourced in the hubris of our ego. And we could name all the plagues around us and find the same one cause and the 7 deadly sins that accompany it. And I've been really reflecting on that this week. I've been really wrestling with this idea of Lashon Hara, this idea of tzara'at, as the plagues that we are surrounded with, from world destruction, from racism and hatred of the other, from obviously the pandemic itself. And all of that seems to be leading to the great disaster, this impending doom ahead of us. And this urgency that we feel to change course before it's too late. And when I analyze what has caused us to get there, to get to the place we are today, up until this week, I had thought that it was because of greed. You know, some of the 7 deadly sins because of greed, maybe. Maybe it was because of pride. Maybe it was because of envy. Maybe it was because of indolence, idleness, or even indifference. And I thought, these would be the cause of our demise, of humanity's extinction. But after this week, I changed my mind. I don't think so anymore. I don't think that any of the above is the core cause of this rush towards self-destruction that we seem to be engaged in. I think Lashon Hara will be by far what will usher in the collapse of our civilization. Lashon Hara, and nothing else. And it is already happening. It is already happening on Facebook. It's happening on Twitter. It's happening the world over through all of those social media platforms. It's happening in our country and in many other countries through the partisan news media, in the alleys of power, on the campaign trails, in what we're seeing as the questioning of science, the abandonment of social trust, the evisceration of truth. We live in a post-truth world, ushered in by Lashon Hara. And in that, we are losing the common ground, the needed, necessary common ground for the decisive actions we know we must take right now to save ourselves from assured extinction. I mean, even in the midst of a tzara'at, of a pandemic tzara'at, the Lashon Hara is so pervasive. Conspiracy theories, one of the examples of Lashon Hara, conspiracy theories so prevalent that local and state governments, some of them, have lifted safety measures. We see people spurning wearing masks, even pegging the vaccine as an international cabal to poison humanity. Lashon Hara kills people. It kills both the spreader and the listener. And make no mistake, QAnon and all the likes are just but small facets of the pervasive Lashon Hara that is in fact destroying the fabric of our civilization, the fabric of our democracy, the fabric of our ability to live together as a nation, as a people on this planet. And that, more than anything else, will prevent us from changing course. Now, the rabbis of the Talmud are engaged in a very passionate conversation, this time about the causes of the destruction of the Second Temple, which we would understand in our day and age as the collapse of Jewish civilization some 2,000 years ago. Because the destruction of the temple ushered in the complete disintegration of the Jewish nation on its own land. The Romans killed 75% of all Jews who lived there. Only 25% survived after the destruction of the temple, and they were dispersed through the entire Roman Empire. So the rabbis are obviously engaged in a conversation about the causes of the destruction of the temple. And some of them are saying that it must have been, they argue, it must have been because our people engaged in the three cardinal sins of idol worshipping, forbidden sexual relations, and bloodshed. That must have been, they write about 100 years later. That must have been what was prevalent at the time. That must have been what caused the destruction of the temple. But the sages who reply to that argument said, no, none of the above. None of the above. It is Lashon Hara, the slander of the Jews against their fellow. It is Lashon Hara which provoked what was termed at the time, and it's an expression that has come to this day, groundless or baseless hatred. Lashon Hara, the slander, the bad-mouthing, the gossiping between us, provoked and created baseless, groundless, unfounded, untrue, unsubstantiated distrust and loathing between us. The expression in Hebrew is sinat chinam. Sinat chinam. Chinam is free or baseless. Sinat is hatred. Baseless, groundless hatred between us. And we are already seeing it. It's here. Look at how we treat each other. And that the rabbis were saying in their argument, the teaching at the end of their argument was that this sinat chinam, this evil of Lashon Hara should teach you that groundless hatred, baseless hatred from untruth is considered equivalent to the three greatest sins of idolatry, immorality, and bloodshed combined. Tzara'at, this disease brought about by Lashon Hara, was meant to afford us the seclusion needed to reflect and to mend our ways, to humble our heart and no longer participate in propagating untruth, bias, and vilification of others. That was what the disease was meant to do, to be for us. It was a gift. May we, in these remaining days of our semi-isolation, semi-exclusion, find within us to reflect deeply, that we might become a force to counter Lashon Hara wherever we find it. That we may be instead conduits, channels for peace, for goodness, for blessings, for grace, for mercy, for compassion and truth. all those qualities that are in fact found in our song at the top of page 30. It's called Sim Shalom. Ken Yehi Ratzon. Amen.
Sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Chenim v'chesim shalom uvracha. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Chen v'sezer v'rachamim. Chen v'chesed v'rachamim, v'rachamim. Aleinu v'kol Yisrael. Aleinu v'kol Yisrael. Sim shalom.
And staying with the energies of Shalom, we enter into a few moments of meditation. Finding our breath, closing our eyes, and turning our attention inward. Looking for the flickering light of Shabbat, shining brightly within our heart. And resting back from all the noise we might find and experience within, the loudness of the thoughts, the busyness of the body's sensations, just to Shabbat from that, to rest back from that, to let it all arise in front of us in awareness. but almost detached from all of it. The body is there, but I am not the body. All the sensations of the body can be felt, but what can be felt is not the true feeler. That presence that is always here, always aware, that sees the body but knows that whatever can be seen is not the seer, that sees also the thoughts arising, that can watch all those thoughts as they arise. Whatever can be watched, whatever can be seen, is not the true seer. Thoughts are coming and going, objects in awareness, objects arising in the presence, but they are not the presence. So rest back into Shabbat. Rest. Rest as the unmoved observer, the uninvolved observer. And rest, relax the body completely. Let go of any tension anywhere, but especially on the face. Every little muscle that we hold tightly on our face, like around our eyes and eyebrows, those little muscles we use to frown, just relax those. Same thing with our cheeks and around our mouth. Just relax those. And also the jaw. Let your face, all the muscles of the face, just melt. Let your entire body melt. And just rest. Watch it all arising. But be the awareness. Not the things in awareness like thoughts, sensations, emotions. Not the things. Just that which is aware of all of it. Rest as presence. Don't listen to the thoughts. Stay with your breath, relaxed, and just rest. Allow everything to arise without getting caught into anything. Feel how the brain is becoming heavy, perhaps, mushy. If you relax deeply, the thoughts are becoming more and more difficult to arise. Everything slows down. Relax a little more. This is Shabbat. Shabbat is this kind of resting of consciousness, this consciousness taking a step back from all the busyness of all the objects within, thoughts, emotions, sensations. Every muscle of the face relaxed, surrendered into this moment. Feeling into the presence that is always here, always aware, who never caught, never bound by the thoughts, never bound by the body, always free of all of it, just observing all of it as things arising. Touching that simple feeling of being, that simple feeling of just being, that doesn't know your age, that doesn't care for your story, that simple feeling of being that was here as far as you can remember. It was here when you were 7 years old. And it is still here. It has never changed. It's always been there. It's that feeling you have when you look into the mirror and see how the thing, the object of consciousness has changed, but you have not. That simple feeling of being is always surprised when that happens, because it never changes. It's always here, aware, always aware. So touch that feeling of just being alive, that aliveness, that beingness that knows no time and space, that has always been here with you, always looking out. Rest in that presence. This is the true Shabbat-ing. Resting. Not a resting from being tired, but a rest as a step back from the objects, the content of awareness. That kind of resting. Relaxing completely every muscle of the face, the belly. It is in the heart of that presence that we find wholeness, harmony, inner peace, that we find shalom. And it is within this inner peace, in that feeling of oneness, that we invite all those we know to be in need of that kind of healing, healing of body, healing of heart, healing of mind, healing of soul, into the circle of healing tonight. Those we name in our hearts right now, those you have inscribed on our community's healing list. On this Shabbat, we hold in light of healing Craig Wilson, Danielle Clark, Hillary Wilson, Phyllis Levin and Mike Levin, Dave Malkoff, Maxwell Bernard, Susanna Davis, David Mark, Richard Aaron Ben Chaim, Martin Yanni, Marissa LeCabe, Pauline Morris, Elizabeth Heath, John Gorham, Janet Lewine, Megan El Sayed, Donald Meadow, Kitty Sturm, Laura Gluck, James Smartus, Nancy Collins, Kelly Reagan, Katie Barnes, Alan Friend, Stephen Ward, Michael Thompson, Katie Margaret Bank, Carol Johnson, Darcy Donegan, Luann Wing, Janet Crowley, Jaden Jones, David Shalloway, Kelly Morris, Larry Hobbs, Isabella Lee, Susan Austin, Chris Werner Mutchell, Mark Anderson, Samia El Muslimani. And we name in our hearts all of those we hold in a circle of healing tonight. ימלא רחמים עליהם לחזיקם ולרפאותם ברפואה שלמה, רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף. And we share with them these words that Moses spoke in that ancient wilderness for the healing of Miriam. Elna Refana La. It is on page 33 in your prayer book.
Please God, let healing be now.
And as we are now in the closing moment of our Shabbat service together, I invite you to turn to page 13 in your prayer book as we prepare to share in the Mourner's Kaddish. It is a moment where we are invited to hold in our hearts and in our minds the memory of those who have journeyed with us for a while and are continuing on their journey of remembering and merging with the one they are. On this Shabbat, we hold special light of memory for those who have made their transition in just last few days or weeks. Jack Cohen, Shelley Cohen's cousin. Dante Wright, a 20-year-old black man victim of police brutality in a suburb of Minneapolis. Adam Toledo, a 13-year-old black boy victim of police violence in Chicago. Matthew Williams, a 35-year-old black man victim of police brutality in Georgia. Marvin Scott III, a 26-year-old black man victim of police brutality in Texas. On this Shabbat, we also hold in light of memory those on our list that you have written who made their transition in the past year. Tim Schott, Janine Gilbert, Imogen Williams, Eldon Olson, Don Worms, Emily Swartz, Dr. Carol Stanley, Robert White, David Hittmiller, Dr. Aggie Schuler, Dr. Diho Schuler, Jerry Crouch, Jonathan Sachs, Fern Danker O'Connor, Gary Marmer, Lorne Lee, Sambung Saisamuth, Sarilu Codden, Mark Antonio Florian Corona, Klaus Schuler, Bill Harris, Michael Ruff, Irvin Faludi, Rebecca Risman, Paul Ponton, Mark Montefusco, Mark Sinclair, Carol Cohen, Carl Robert Finkelstein, Judy Turin, Ava Boidosh, Daryl Summers, Asher Hashash, Imam Benjamin Shabazz, Gloria Funston, Yitzchak Leib Ben Bertha ve'Aaron, Norman Lubitsch, Marcia Whelan. On the Shabbat, we also share in light of memory for those whose transition, the anniversary of whose transition happens at this time of the year, their yard site. As Gronlund, Arthur Ness, Demetrius Oliver Sullivan, Dennis Cole, Jeanette Yanni, Janet Staub, Judy Chiason, Mary Wilson, Nancy Merrily, Ron Busby, Rose Wolfe, Solomon Levy, Sylvia Bernard, Mary Squeeze. and we share with all we have named in our heart and all whose names have been called the Mourner's Kaddish on page 13. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא. ויתהדר ויתהלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לאלה מן כל ביחתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמא, ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל ישמעאל, ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו אמן. May the one who creates harmony above make peace for us, for all the household of Israel, for all the household of Yishmael, and for all the peoples of the world. And let us say, Amen. And before we close with blessing our challah again, blessing the wine, just a few announcements. Beit Midrash is tomorrow. We continue exploring the amazing work of Moses Maimonides. Sunday, April 18th, keep your phones on and be ready to answer the call from our so dedicated board members who are going to spend most of their day calling all of you to say hello, first and foremost, to ask about your health and how you've been doing this past few months of isolation, and also to ask you to contribute to support what you love, to support this community of yours, that we might continue to create amazing events and classes and workshops to support each of us through all these times ahead. So please answer the phone, even if you don't recognize who is calling. It takes just a few minutes. They are giving their day for you and for all of us. So be there for them as well. And for all of you who have already contributed to the Phonathon, thank you so much. April 20th on Tuesday is our first new Bali speaker who is starting this Tuesday. So hopefully, I know that a bunch of you are registered for it. If you haven't, just look in our email and meet one of our members and see the talents that so many of you have and contribute to our community. And it's kind of an amazing thing to be involved with. May 2nd is a different kind of fundraiser. As you know, Bet Alef has been involved for years now in supporting the plight and being there for the refugees who have gone through some really hard times in the past few years, trying to make it into our country for a better life. Many of them are still imprisoned, put in cages. And our group, there is a Jewish coalition that supports the effort to allow these refugees to have their day in court. Oftentimes, they are stuck behind bars because they don't have the money to be bailed and hire a lawyer. When you're stuck behind bars, there is nowhere for you to go outside and hire somebody to defend and plead your case for asylum. And so this Jewish coalition, of which Bet Alef is a part, is once a year raising funds to replenish the fund that is used to bail those refugees out of detention, that they might get some legal help. The communication was in our email. You refer back to the email you received on Wednesday, and all of the information will be found there. It's a necessary cause, another one of the tzara'at in our world today. Before we bless, we have to bless. We bless now that night has fallen. We bless this new day of our counting the Omer. This Shabbat day is no longer the 19th day of the Omer, but it's not yet the 21st day. So if you know the blessing, say it with me. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al svirat haomer. Blessed One, you are the emptiness that is all form, that is all of us. You are the source of all that is. You are isness itself. You bless us with paths of holiness, of remembering that we are holy, that we are sacred. And you give us this practice of mindfulness, of counting these days, of making every day count, counting the days of Omer. Today is the 20th day, comprising 2 weeks and 6 days of the Omer. Amen. So, I'm going to ask everyone to unmute, grab your Kiddush cup, grab a little bit of wine or juice, whatever is fitting for you. Fill your cup at least over halfway. That's all that's required. In some tradition, I remember in my home, we used to actually fill the cup all the way to the rim. Which is why, if you ever wondered why when you buy a Kiddush cup, they also give you a little plate. It's because you need to capture the spilling. And if you have never done this practice, you don't know why you buy a Kiddush cup. It comes with a plate. Now you know. So raise your cup.
Should we go after you?
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzvanu shabbat kodsho be'ahava u'ratzon hilanu zikaron למעשה וראשית ויום תחילה למקרא קודש החל יצרים אנו בחרת ואנו קידשת מכל העמים שבת קודשה אהבה ורצון הנחלנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. Now, as I bring my little find a challah to cluster around. No, it's not please.
Oh my
Yeah.
Look at that
But you catch it,
jaw.
I missed it.
And put your hand,
And
touch
on
the
the
challah.
There, yeah.
Baruch
Baruch
atah
atah
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech
melech haolam,
hamotzi
motzi
lechem
lechem min
haaretz.
haaretz.
Amen.
Amen.
No, Shukhet.
Oh God.
So cute.
So does she prefer challah over tortillas now?
I don't know.
What
That
a
was pretty
cutie.
good. Licking good.
Oh.
Yeah, she's a cutie.
Yeah.
I'm gonna mute everybody again. We're gonna close.
What?
We're gonna close with
We just
a
started.
song "Light Love One" on page 25.
Oh, that's a good
Then,
one.
then I'm gonna say goodbye to all of those watching us on Zoom on Facebook, and then those of us on Zoom can stay together and have a little oneg chat after the song. So Diana, take it away.
It's
Oh,
Celia.
it's Celia. Celia, take it away. I'm gonna mute Celia. You're gonna need to unmute yourself again.
Okay, oh.
Goodness. Sorry. Every heart, in every mind, in every emotion of every kind, and in every verse, and in every line, there is light, there is love, there is one. Where darkness dwells, fear is gone, where there is peace, and where there is God, and where it's remembered or it's forgot, there is light, there is love, there is one. There is light, there is love, for we all far above. There is light, there is love, there is one, only one. As without so it is, so it has always been. There is light, there is love, there is one, only one. Die, 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 da, da, die, 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 ya, da, die, 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 ya, da, die, die, die. There is light, there is love, there is one. There is light, there is love, for below, far above. There is light, there is one, only one. As without, so it is, so it has always been. There is light, there is love, there is one, only one. In every mind, in every motion of every kind, and in every verse, and in every line, there is light, there is love, there is one. Where darkness dwells, fear is gone, where there is peace, and where there is not, and where it's remembered or it's forgot. There is light, there is love, there is one.
All right, so we're saying goodbye to all of you watching us on Facebook. Shabbat Shalom. Have a great weekend, everybody. The rest of us, we can stay here to